From beer pong to lonely bongs, as COVID-19 forced college students to social distance and attend online classes, a spike in marijuana consumption followed in response, as well as a decline in drinking alcohol. UMass Amherst sophomore Cara Lustig was sent home from her college campus in the peak of the pandemic and decided weed would help her while isolated.
So previous to the pandemic, I definitely was smoking less regularly, more at nighttime to settle down, or as a social interactions with friends. It was usually just something fun that I did towards the evening to relax and to get better sleep. And that definitely changed when the pandemic started and I was by myself a lot of the time. I was bored, not knowing exactly what to do to fill up that time, and I turned to marijuana to try to distract myself.
Research by the National Institute on Drug Abuse shows 44% of college students reported using marijuana in 2020, an increase from 38% in 2015. Daily marijuana consumption rose from 5% to 8% in 5 years. UMass Amherst junior Claire O'Brien explains why she started smoking more during the pandemic.
Before the pandemic, I had gone into smoking like that whole year before, but I wouldn't say it was like an everyday thing or like it was more of a social thing before the pandemic, definitely. And then the pandemic started and I was home for the whole year. I didn't go to school. So I was like pretty isolated, and that I definitely started smoking a lot more because I had a lot more time alone to myself.
Both Lustig and O'Brien felt isolated while being stuck at home and away from the party atmosphere. UMass Amherst colleges have been known to throw wild parties with a lot of drinking, earning them the nickname Zoomass. However, alcohol use was less common with college students during the pandemic. The National Institute on Drug Abuse study shows decreases between 2019 and 2020 in terms of binge drinking and overall alcohol use. Binge drinking is defined as having 5 or more drinks in one outing at least once in 2 weeks, and that fell from 32% to 24%, the lowest in the study's history. UMass Amherst psychology major Lizzie Perella adds some insight she's learned from her classes on substance abuse.
Drinking alone has a lot of taboo, around it, where you could be viewed as an alcoholic or it's just not good for you. And drinking alone, sometimes alcohol makes you more sad because it's a depressant. The cannabis, everyone knows it relaxes you. So when people started experimenting with that, it was definitely a way to self-medicate and escape and I guess cope without even having to leave their house.
While many people use marijuana to cope with physical pain, consumption rose during the pandemic to help with the mental pain of isolation and loneliness that came with quarantine.
Cannabis can be used as an alternative treatment for relieving physical pain or chronic pain, but research indicates that cannabis consumers during the pandemic were more likely to use cannabis to improve their mental and emotional health as opposed to treating physical symptoms.
The height of the pandemic was an anxiety-filled time for a lot of people, and marijuana has been known to both reduce and induce stress and anxiety.
I stopped because I started getting a lot of anxiety during COVID, and then I had a really bad high, and I haven't had the urge to smoke since then. I don't want to after that. And I was doing it way too much, so it was just time. It was kind of taking too much time out of my day. And money also.
For O'Brien, marijuana helped her in the start of the pandemic, but ended up only increasing her anxiety more. The situation was different for Lustig, where marijuana continued to help her with her anxiety during quarantine.
It was almost like I wanted the time to just go by faster, and when you use marijuana, it kind of clouds reality in some way, and it does help me decompress. I do struggle with a lot of anxiety, and during the pandemic, I was experiencing spikes in my anxiety where besides not getting out of bed because I didn't have to, I really just didn't want to. But marijuana gave me an outlet to really try and be more creative when I was not doing anything with my free time.
This historic increase in weed consumption, along with the decrease in alcohol and binge drinking among college students, coincides with a time marked by isolation, the coronavirus pandemic. Cannabis consumer or not, communicate to a mental health professional about your stress or anxiety before turning to substances. For WMA News, I'm Caroline Bertoletti.